So I just want to remind people how the military-industrial complex-funded news covers war. This is the CNN reporter they sent to Syria to investigate a suspected chemical attack. And watch how she investigates.
And there's definitely something that stings.
So, you know, if I was a reporter on the ground in a war zone where a chemical attack just happened and I thought there was deadly gas on a backpack, the first thing I would do is start sniffing it. And it's amazing. She's still alive. She's still alive, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh, that sarin gas sure is spicy. I saw it featured as a sauce one time on Hot Ones. And Jeff Goldblum said the same thing. It stings. Yeah. So that's how they cover it. And so now, and then people like Aaron Matei and the Gray Zone and me come along and debunk their gas attack reporting in Syria or Venezuela or Libya or wherever it happens. We debunk CNN's coverage, which is just repeating the State Department and CIA talking points, which is what they do at CNN and places like the Young Turks. So we come along and we debunk it. So now they've invented their own quote unquote independent news. Who did? The government, the United States and the UK government have done this, right? And it's called Bellingcat. Now, we've told you about this before, and I'm going to refresh your memory. Bellingcat has smeared me personally at the show, also smeared Aaron Mate, and it's great to see that 60 Minutes is now in bed with them. Of course they are, because the government created this. The government created a pretend independent news agency so they can then push pro-war propaganda and then try to discredit people like Aaron Mate as he wins an award doing his anti-war coverage in Syria. Bellingcat is there to try to discredit Aaron Mate. And that's who this guy is. This is the guy from Bellingcat. And so Aaron Mate, so 60 Minutes did a thing on them just this week. And Aaron says it's a duty of any news outlet covering or citing Bellingcat to inform its audience that Bellingcat is funded by the United States and the UK governments, as well as several spook firms that profit off of U.S. regime change wars. Let's see if 60 Minutes does that. Let's see. Are you ready? By the way, I don't know where you went to journalism school, Aaron, but I'm pretty sure it's their duty not to reveal things that could hurt the war effort, okay? So here we go.
I feel it's almost my duty that when we're faced with all this information showing terrible things that are happening, is to pull it out there. It does involve risk, but...
So I just think it's great. He says, well, let me just play it again.
I feel it's almost my duty that when we're faced with all this information showing terrible things that are happening, is to pull it out there.
That's why I only look into terrible information on NATO's enemies. I don't want to end up like Julian Assange. So that's what this guy does. So that's what Bellingcat does. Whatever the CIA and State Department wants them to say about a war, that's what they do. They start writing stuff like that. So they're not putting out truthful information. They're putting out propaganda that is pro-war, pro-CIA, and pro-imperialism. That's what they do. And also, he's being paid by several intelligence agencies. So that's why they do that, too. That's his duty. Okay.
It does involve risk, but then defending liberty, human rights, democracy involves taking risks. It's when we stop taking risks and we let the fear take hold that we see democracy die.
Oh, sure, it's dangerous. He's got to take risks, Aaron. It is dangerous. I mean, some of these CIA and MI6 people scare the shit out of him. But he figures if he keeps his head down and do as he told, he probably won't get Epsteined eventually. That's what he's saying. It is very brave to report the war crimes of your country's enemies so that hopefully they can be tried at a war court that your own country doesn't subscribe to because they would be prosecuted for war crimes in that war court. Isn't that kind of amazing? Okay, here we go.
See a Russian armored column.
We met Elliot Higgins last month in London as Bellingcat was building a database of social media exposing apparent war crimes in Ukraine.
That guy's voice makes it sound real. It does. He's got that announcer voice, and he has a seriousness that it imparts with the timbre in his voice. It sounds real, doesn't it, Aaron?
It sounds very real, and that's why they use him for every single segment pushing a national security state scam. He's
Pelley?
the guy, Scott Pelley. Syria, Russia, you name it. It's always his, announcer voice pushing it.
Okay, here we go.
Eyewitness accounts of attacks on neighborhoods, assaults on hospitals, and murders of civilians are being collected and published on Bellingcat's website for all to see.
This is actually the location where the woman was killed.
Nearly everyone in Ukraine is a witness with a camera. Bellingcat is combining tens of thousands of social media posts to make them searchable by place and time.
And we look at as many sources as possible and use those sources to build a picture of what happened. Videos, photographs, satellite imagery. Then we look at the witness statements and the various allegations made by either side.
Locations and times are corroborated with independent sources, including satellite images and Google Street View. The goal is to provide verified evidence for future criminal trials.
And it also means that we're collecting an archive of material.
Future criminal trials in a court that the United States doesn't recognize or participate in because we commit the most war crimes in the world. Scott Pelley's not going to tell you that, and neither is this guy. But we're going to tell you that here on YouTube until they shut us down.
For future generations, they can go back and look at this material. I mean, it's often said that, history is written by the victors, but it's being written now and it's being preserved now.
So so Aaron says, remember he asked the question, is 60 Minutes going to tell you who funds this group? Turns out, update, 60 Minutes did not inform its audience that Bellingcat is funded by the U.S. and U.K. governments, as well as several spook firms that profit off the U.S. regime change wars. And what I say to that was, what does that have to do with anything, Aaron? You just think because he gets his where he gets his funding from, it affects his reporting? If that were true, Aaron, the Young Turks would be a joke right now. If funding really affected reporting, then Microsoft NBC would be the trusted even less than Fox News. Imagine that. A crazy world like that. Imagine that. So here's the funding. I'll show you. Here's the funding. So there's income from companies, actuals, budget, actuals, Zandstorm, ZFE, Adam Smith International, Zinc Network, Comonix International, other companies, the EU. That's the governments that fund them. The European Union funds them. Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Plus, I know they get funding from NED. What are these companies here?
Well, so Adam Smith International is a war profiteer. It made a lot of money in Iraq and it made a lot of money in Syria, essentially helping to whitewash and support the sectarian death squads that the U.S. and its allies were backing in the Syria dirty war. And so this only came out last year. So this is startling. It's also another firm called Chemtronics.
Yeah.
They're called, or Chemonix.
Chemonix
so
International.
Chemonix and Adam Smith are two war profiteers, particularly involved in Syria, where Bellingcat does so much, a quote unquote investigation. So basically, Bellingcat is taking money, not just from governments, but from spook firms that profit off of these governments' dirty wars, especially in Syria. And by the way, the amount of money that they've gotten from U.S. taxpayers via the National Endowment for Democracy, which is basically a regime change arm of the CIA, it's unknown. If you look at the NED's database, the NED has a database of all the people that it funds, all the groups that it funds. You won't even find a trace of Bellingcat, even though it's acknowledged, it's public knowledge that the NED has funded Bellingcat. We don't even know how much money they've received from U.S. taxpayers. So everybody in the U.S. that pays taxes, you've given money to this shady group Bellingcat, and we have no idea to know actually how much it is.
We don't even know. So when you see 60 Minutes doing a story on a guy like this and say that this guy's some kind of truth teller, some independent truth teller setting up a website database that documents war crimes, What Scott Pelley is doing is earning his $1 million because he is pretending that this guy who works directly for the U.S. government and for weapons manufacturers is somehow telling you the truth about anything instead of manufacturing consent for more war. And that's what 60 Minutes was doing. They're manufacturing consent.